There, my air drums. I'll put them down, put the sticks down here. Thank you once again for joining us for It's a Kind of Magic, the show where we talk about the independent personal search agency, which is chaired at the moment by Hamish, which Heather is the chief exec. Jackie is a revered consultant, and I'm just a man in a silly hat. Today we're talking about searches, specifically the search agent's sixth sense. And as is typical on this channel, Hamish, please take us away.
Well, there was a time, of course, when one could sort of speak of such things as sort of witchcraft and the intuitive mind. I often wondered why it was that I'm always sort of told that the female mind is the more intuitive. I'm inclined to actually agree, because my wife has a habit of saying things like, Eva, she has this habit of saying, well, that's not a particularly good move, that one. And I think, well, I know better. And it wasn't a particularly good move. And however, it's not just the sort of female of the species who makes a particularly good sort of local authority search agent. Some males are able to do it. Not myself. I rely on I rely on Paula and Shelley to do things like that, and Gemma, because they're the ones that do all the hard work. But there are certain things you automatically become accustomed to within what is going on. Now, if you've trained and you've worked with a local authority for a time period, you get to understand it. In a far better position, of course, if you come from where Jackie used to be sat, when you actually were a land charges officer as well. And bearing in mind, I mean, we've got, there's at least 3, I can't remember, it might even be 4 ex-land charges workers who do have their own, run their own businesses. But the thing is that certain things, you see one thing and you expect another. And now it does actually become almost intuitive because you do it automatically. And it is that particular sort of sixth sense. And so much of the time, particularly experiences we go through, you can actually sort of say, well, you know, there's something not quite right here.
Is that because that from your experience that you can perceive there's nothing not quite right, or is it that sixth sense you're talking about, Amy?
Well, I don't know. I don't have a female mind, but I do try and make use of the female aspects of my brain from time to time to look at certain things. One of the worst things, of course, is one of my team. They're absolutely fantastic with maps. She's far, far better with maps than I am, and the female mind apparently isn't meant to be particularly good with maps. So that's something else. No,
hang on. We've got contentiousness in the cheap seats.
Yeah,
Jackie, is it not the female mind that's better with maps, or they're the female mind better with everything?
Well, no, I won't say we're better with everything, because there's things we can do and things we can't do. But yeah, funny enough, I do think, I know some women do not have a sense of direction, but if you have got a sense of direction, daft as it sounds, you're probably going to be very good at working with maps. Because as we know, back in the old days when I used to work with the maps, the country is split up and it's given the Ordnance Survey reference number. So if you take, I was searching on 0725 Northwest, and I go across and I see a property that's on half of this and half on the next page, you've got to think, hang on, what's that one there? So if you're 0725 Northwest, you're moving, you go into the northeast. And if you're going down, you go to the southwest. And obviously it is, I think sometimes women are slightly a little bit better, although some women are got a terrible sense of direction. So it's just how a person's mind works, not whether you're a woman or a man. It's how your mind works, whether you can work with maps or you can. Now it's all online. So I sat and looked at a development that's going on the road from me. I wanted to know what it was. Found my house, and from there I knew where to go to get to that development. And it's nothing to do with male or female. It's how your brain processes things.
Heather, I'm famous for having won the 100 yards for men with no sense of direction. I ended up at a chip shop, of course. What I was going to say is it down to experience that allows you to almost have a sense of where this is going before it gets there?
Yeah, certainly experience has a large part to play in that, but also some people just have that way of looking at things, and it's nothing to do with male or female. It's just everyone's different, but there are some things that are down to experience. So once you know what you're doing, if you come across a tree consent in your planning history, you're going to be looking to say, right, well, there's either a tree preservation order or a conservation area on this property, or it abuts one of those. So that is experience. But there are other things which are a bit more sort of intuitive, which might be if you've got a new development or a house that's had some work done on it, had a planning application done in the last 10 years, you would expect there to be some building control to match that. Right. And if that's not there, you look a bit deeper. And I mean, there have been occasions where the planning has been approved, but when you actually look a bit deeper, you find that the building work was never done, and that's why there was no building control in that property. So some of that is experience, some of that will be intuitive, and it's no good just getting the information and putting it into the report. Your brain has got to be looking at that information and absorbing it and thinking, what else should I find based on what I've already got? And as opposed to, I think, a lot of the larger factory style conveyancers, their staff aren't given quite the same training, they don't have quite the same expertise, and they will just accept the information they've got, put it in the report without actually absorbing it and looking at it a bit deeper.
Is it simply the difference between having training and having gone through, whether you've had training or not, a number of years of being exposed to a number of things which may be similar, but it's all the differences that become imbued in your brain and in your sensibilities. So when you come across things that look similar, it kind of pushes you to look a little bit deeper.
Yeah, there's definitely a part of that, but there's also, I think, if you look at some of the larger firms and that they employ unqualified people or people that haven't had full training and probably aren't being paid enough to spend the time on the job, that's when things are going to get missed. They haven't got the incentive to look, whereas we're dealing with customers that have been clients of ours for 20 years. We have a big relationship with them. We don't want to let them down. We want everything we send them to be perfect. So we check and absorb and think and make sure that everything we send to that client is going to be perfect. So yes, it's partly experience and knowledge and training, but it's also partly how much you care about what you're providing to your client.
So Hamish, it's not really about the female mind, it's just maybe they care a little bit more.
Well, yes, there is that as well. Some females do care a lot more than me. That's why females particularly make good nurses. They have a caring sort of nature about them. I mean, I only mentioned it. I was very fortunate. I attended a lecture by a very famous Australian he was at the time, but since it was last century, everybody's probably forgotten. Alan Pease wrote a book with his wife entitled "Why Women Can't Read Maps and Men Can't Ask for Directions." They've attended a couple of lectures of his, which were very interesting. But what it was to try and explain those particular sort of differences. But both Jackie and sort of Heather put it right. It matters not. It matters not. However, I do know from out of the three of us, the three mainstays here, the two females are far better at locating things on maps than I am, and I don't mind admitting to the fact. And I always say to Shelley, because she's the one I'll speak to, I'll say, right, Shelley, where exactly is this particular part? Because we're looking at something a bit deeper. We're looking at registered commons and various statements and goodness knows sort of what else. So we're taking it a bit further. And sometimes I'm a bit, where the heck is it? And she just has a bit far better overview. However, the problem is back to one of the comments that we make from time to time. We only know what we know, and nobody tells us any different. And unfortunately, in many instances, because they have a totally different business model, what somebody's actually sort of providing when the factory conveyancing is a business model. It's a way of doing things,
Right.
which came about with the advent of home information packs. Somebody wanted to get this massive volume through as quickly as possible. And whereas previously, instead of using somebody who was located within the vicinity of where the property was to gather the information, it was decided, let's try and find a quick way of just getting the information there. So that became the exercise to get the information down. No need to follow up. You didn't need to understand it. And in fact, I mean, Jackie will remember back to this as well as Heather, but Jackie particularly from her land charges experience, if it was stated in land charges, you had to write it down. You didn't check whether the relevance of it or not. It just went down automatically. However, there were certain things in that you would start recognizing over time that really, when it's become a housing estate, you didn't really need to know that it was a temporary entrance to a factory, way back about 30 years ago. And some land charges are still contained within properties like that. But what we're speaking about is what is learned from the experience and getting to know the area too. The particular sort of key is certain things which automatically run together. And of course, we would expect all properties with planning permission, once that work has been carried out, to actually sort of have the close off, to actually sort of have the building. We know it's sometimes valueless in some of the properties we speak of, but we need that building inspector to sort of have looked into it to say, yes, that's passed, off you go.
Jackie, you're a lady of some considerable experience within this, and yet seems to be this inexorable urge for solicitors to try and rely on like a centralized factory style things to get through volume. I get that. Surely they're going to miss out on some of the detail that is garnered by having a knowledge of your local area.
Oh, definitely. As you say, the local area, you get to know it so well. And I know one particular occasion when I was in Calderdale, somebody must have pushed the wrong button on the computer. I was doing searches and I picked up an application on a property I was searching on, and I thought, well, that's not right. That's not right. That seems a bit spidey sense. I think that's the best word, spidey sense. That's not right. So I thought, I'll do the next one and I'll come back to that so I can investigate it. When I did the next search, the same application came up on that search. So automatically your radar is so then I thought, right, I'll look at that and I'll do the next one. And I did about 10. And 10 on those 10 searches, that planning application came up on every single search. So you're thinking, well, this is strange. So when you look at the actual description of the search and then go into the planning file and see where it was, as I said, somebody pressed the wrong button. So it went on the whole area of Calderdale and not on the actual development it was supposed to be on.
Got you.
So fortunately, being that I had a few to do, so then I informed land charges that there was something wrong. So it was sorted. But you can imagine if a factory searcher came along and just did one search, picked it up, wouldn't think about it, doesn't know the area like we do, we know our areas, and just reveals it. And it wasn't only on the planning, it did appear on land charges as well for the correct property as it should have been. But it was on the planning system, but somebody who wasn't au fait with their local area. So they've said to somebody who works, say, in Lancashire, and does know that area and Cumbria or whatever, and they say, oh, just pop across to Yorkshire to do a Calderdale search, do this one whilst you're there, sort of thing. And they don't know that area. They don't know the things. They don't know when an area might become a conservation area, because we'll look weekly, monthly to see, is there a new conservation area coming up, etc., etc., etc. They just won't have that local knowledge, and therefore you can't beat local knowledge. Same as I was in police force. You can't beat local knowledge, because then you know when someone's done something. So,
Heather, an IPSA member tends to be focused on their local area, but because you work as a fellowship, you know, if it's not, if what they need is out of the area, they are inclined to collaborate with someone else. Is that what sets IPSA apart from, for instance, factory conveyancing?
I believe so, yes. I believe that when you work with an IPSA member, so if a conveyancer uses an IPSA member, they are actually getting a local expert throughout the whole of England and Wales. Because if I have a search like I've had last week for Devon, or if I've had one for Leicester, I will send that request through to one of our other members. They will collate all the information for me with their local knowledge and expertise, and I will put that into my report for my client. So if somebody is using an IPSA member, they will be getting a local expert throughout the whole of England and Wales.
That's incredible. Hamish, would you unmute yourself, please, and take us home, please?
But not a lot of people ask me to unmute myself. Thank you for your guidance there, Gareth. Heather is a prime example of one with knowledge, because she is one that, and she does hold an awful lot of records on behalf of IPSA members, to the extent that Heather can actually point out when local authorities have got their information incorrect, and have done it over a period of time. And this has come up because, as we know, a lot of land charges work now has been passed over to land registry. Now, land registry, they're trying to carry out a factory type process, in fairness to them. They just want to grab the whole lot. So effectively, it's being handled that particular. They don't know what the heck goes on in Shropshire. They're not intending to find out. They don't particularly want to. They just want to get a load of detail down there, get that detail out, so people can actually pick it up, so they can make a bit of money, I guess, as well, and actually pay for all the trouble they've gone through to put this stuff together. But we were actually sort of found out that, I mean, Heather is absolutely great at this. She will point out to land registry, say, I don't think you've got this right. And she's done it sort of locally, certainly with herself within Shropshire, where some of the councils, one of the councils in Shropshire particularly, and one we've actually mentioned in the past, her son having lived in Bristol, land registry taken over, let me check a few things out. Oh, hang on. It doesn't say about his house what it should say about my son's house. So the advantage is what will happen as well. IPSA members, and we're well known, this is why we have a very good relationship with land registry. We're not saying you've got it wrong. We're saying, oh, by the way, this has actually sort of come up. And we try and find ways of working through it with them. And they rely very, very much on the feedback that we actually give them. So everybody is benefiting from what us as independents are actually doing. So in fairness, there's a lot of knowledge which gets fed back into the whole system. And as we found out much sort of earlier on, many of you don't know who are listening in, the whole reason why data is so accessible today is because several of the earlier members of IPSA went to the trouble of actually doing that within Europe and actually against what the government wanted to do in this country. So there's a lot to be said for the experience, and obviously this intuition. Surely we should be able to get that. Surely you should be able to find that, and our members will actually do it on behalf of their clients.
So what we've got here is not just simple intuition. It's actually a bit more than that. It's accumulated knowledge, localized, but spread nationally. And that is a fundamental difference to a centralized factory conveyancing style. It means you're likely to get the most apt knowledge for your area. And that's why I always encourage people. I'm a muggle, so I'm outside of all this. But looking in, I love the way that everyone works together. Having been, thankfully, at a couple of IPSA events, it's wonderful the way they all jump in to help each other achieve the goal, and that is a satisfied conveyancing process. Thank you once again to, of course, Heather Poole-Gleed of Shropshire Property Search, Jackie Dyson for Yorkshire Search Agency, of course, Hamish McClay, our Lord and Master of Search Convey, and for myself with the silly purple hat. Thank you one and all for attending IPSA Kind of Magic. Try and keep your feet on the ground, reach for the stars, but look after your mental health. Until next week, bye-bye now.